Hello there. Do you have writer's block and find yourself struggling to actually get back into writing? In this video, I'm going to break down why everything you've learned about writer's block is wrong. I'm actually giving you an analogy that's going to quickly help you determine what's actually going on when you feel stuck so that you can easily figure out how to get back to writing. So let's get started. I believe the idea that we're blocked is a failure of the English language. Stick with me. I have about 3 degrees in English, and I believe in the power of words to encapsulate sentiments and ideas in very clear ways. And metaphorically, I don't like the notion of writer's block because blocks, right, metaphorically are really heavy and they create physical barriers between where we are now and where we want to be. And so this notion of being blocked is actually disingenuous. It doesn't actually encapsulate what it means to write. Instead, to me, writer's block has nothing to do with being blocked. It has everything to do with being lost. I believe that instead of looking at a big block as like a rock, that technically you're in the metaphorical forest of writing. And really you're wondering, what path to come next, right? Because you're sitting in this space where you don't know where to head or you don't know what to do because you're trying to navigate all the feelings and all the thoughts as you're trying to figure out how to do the thing that you're doing in your writing. And so when you begin to sort of shift your mindset from this idea that you're blocked and you can't do anything because you're stuck, but instead you shift it to a perspective in which, oh, I'm just in this space. And I have actually a lot of choices, right? When you can make that shift, you're providing yourself the opportunity to have a lot more agency and seek out a lot more tools to support you in figuring out how to get back to writing, right? And you have the ability to decide. When you can shift from being like, oh, I'm blocked, there's this force outside of me that I have to make sense of, but instead are like, oh, let me take a step back and be like, where am I right now in this forest of writing? You have the ability to decide what next steps you take. Heck, you could even go back from where you were there, right? As well as go forward. So again, I'm going to reiterate, you're not blocked. You're not standing in front of a rock that seems inconceivable to move. Instead, you're lost. And if you're lost, then what are the tools that you can call on to support you? Right? Because then the question is now, where are you in the forest? What led you here? What are your options there? And that, my friend, is what I call the writing process. Right. So, as a writing professor, this is how I teach writing through a process that we all move through in each of our own unique ways. Right. And your job as a writer is to simply notice and begin to gather awareness of what your process is like. And what are the feelings and thoughts that you have as you move along to that writing process? And while, yes, of course, right, everyone writes, everybody revises, and then they submit something for publishing or for a grade for a class, right? But the truth is, each of us approaches each part of that process differently. For instance, in my class, we do brainstorming before we ever get started writing on anything. I introduce my students to mind mapping, outlining, free writing, all these different ways that you can approach writing. Another example is when people start writing their papers or when people write blog posts, sometimes they begin in the middle, right? Like sometimes when we're writing our stories, we just get into the part of the story that like has the juicy part, right? But there are other people that can't start there. They like to begin with the introduction, with framing the story, right? And so everybody has a total, and some people like to begin with the end in mind, right? They're like, oh, I'm gonna create this ending, I'm gonna write it, right? So everybody has a very different approach, and I'm sure there's something else in there if you do it a little differently than even any of those, right? I know some people who jump into research that sparks something in the beginning of the process before they even start writing. They're like, ooh, let me read this. Ooh, let me take a look at this, right? And so what I'm trying to show you here, just one part of the writing process, you may have a very different way of approaching it than I do. And that's your goal as a writer is to figure out like, oh, what is my process? What are the ways that I like to write in the beginning, in the middle, and the end of my entire project, right? Whatever it is that you're writing. And then once you have a really strong sense of your own writing process, then I encourage you to explore the feelings and thoughts you have as you move through that process. Like, so for instance, for me, I love the beginning part of the writing process because for me, it's full of possibilities and ideas, and I feel free. I tend to get stifled and I tend to have a lot of negative feelings and thoughts when I'm revising and I'm trying to refine something, right? Meanwhile, I know for some of the people I've worked with in the classroom and in business, literally the worst part for them is the beginning because they are just so overwhelmed by where to even start, right? And so everybody gets to have their own writing process. Your job is to simply be aware of like, oh, like what do I like to do at this certain part of the writing process? What really helps me, right? And for you to know how do you respond when you're in that part of the writing process, right? Okay. So if you've left me, I'm calling you to return to me. This is our stop, drop, and write moment in the video where we take a moment, we anchor into the more intuitive, and we honor the importance of being intentional and taking some time to reflect. So today I invite you to explore where you are in your writing process right now. Like keep it simple. Like are you at the beginning, the middle, or the end? And what is it about this particular juncture in the writing process that has you feeling stuck and not knowing where to go next? What are your feelings and thoughts about it? And try to separate it because those are two different things. Feelings are thought and thoughts are two different things. And then right now, what are tools, people, or resources that could support you as you try to move through and determine your next step? Alrighty. So I'm Dr. Raquel, and I help visionary women of color who carry so much in their communities move from writing what's expected, the educational, professional, polished writing and content, to courageously sharing their personal stories that reflect their full lived experience so they can inspire others and make the impact they know they're here to make. And I appreciate you being with me in this video today. And so you might be wondering, how do I figure out where I am and how do I figure out how to get back on track and figure out what path to take in the forest, right? The metaphorical forest of writing. So if you're lost, and sometimes it's going to help you to take a look at a map, right? And get a sense of how to get on the right path for you. And for now, the map I'm going to give you has three different places where I usually see people get lost in the writing process. One, people usually get lost because they actually don't know how to write whatever they've set out to do. I'm going to be honest, right? So often people are excited to take on a new writing endeavor, or maybe you're in a new class and you're like, oh my God, I thought this was going to be exciting. And now I realize I don't know how to do this thing this person's asking me to do, right? Or maybe you're like, oh my God, I'm so excited to write a book. I'm so excited to take on a blog. But often what happens is you get lost because you actually don't have a strong sense of like, what is the structure? And what is it I'm supposed to put together? And how am I supposed to write this, right? And some people may actually be following that structure and still find themselves lost in the folds of what they're trying to figure out in certain components of it because you just don't know what you're doing because you haven't done it before, right? And so it's important for you to be honest with yourself. Do you know how to do what's being asked of you? Do you understand all that it requires to come to fruition in the way you envisioned? And then once you have those answers, the next step is like, well, where do I find those answers? Or am I simply sitting in a place of doubt where I think I've never done anything like this, right? So that's the first. The second place that I've seen people get stuck and lost in the metaphorical forest of writing is that their thoughts are keeping them from getting anything on the page. And by thoughts, I mean like that inner critic and that like what I call the writing gremlin that resides there within our wonderful and brilliant mind that rarely has anything nice to say to us. And sometimes we're so overwhelmed by the ways that our writing doesn't seem to be measuring up to the way that we had imagined that we stop writing altogether, right? I'm going to give you the last one. I want you to keep considering like which one are you at right now? Is it that you actually don't really know what you're doing? Is it that you have these really not supportive thoughts right now that are even keeping you from moving and doing any writing at all? And then the third one here, emotions, right? Some people's emotions are very overwhelming and they're keeping them from writing their stories or writing anything, right? And this is a little more complex, right? Especially if you're writing your own stories, right? Because once you start writing your own personal stories, there's like a myriad of emotions that you're navigating, right? Not only the ones surrounding the writing, but surrounding all the stuff that you're writing about. There's a sense of what you're moving through emotionally as you do that, right? And usually, right, out of all these three, it could be like you don't know what you're doing because you haven't done it before and you don't have the guidance right now to do it. Two, you have some thoughts that are not being very supportive. And three, emotions that are really keeping you in a place from being able to write. Usually, emotions and thoughts are sort of tangled together. So it's important for you to slow down and be like, okay, I'm sitting here in the metaphorical forest of writing. Which one of these is it? Right? Because sometimes I sit down and I'm like, I don't know how to do this thing. And then I'm like, oh, but I was given this tool. Maybe I need to go check it out. It could be that simple, right? Versus the thoughts, it's like, oh, is that like a supportive thought to have right now? Can I consider and create a different thought? and not one that's like really affirmation based, that's like beyond your actual way of believing and you holding in your body. Like create an affirmation that you can stick with, right? Like for me, what I always say when I don't have really great supportive thoughts, I just say like, but I'm not done yet. Like I don't get to have this thought about how this isn't good yet because I haven't finished writing it, right? And that's very simple. That's not me saying I'm an amazing writer, right? It's just me saying, oh, but like I don't get to have an opinion or a thought about this yet. It's not complete. And sometimes I'm like, well, I haven't spoken to someone who might give me some guidance yet. I don't need to make up my mind about something on the page if it's not yet complete, if I haven't received support. So figure out for you what is the thought that's going to help you move forward on that path of writing. And emotions are really tricky. And if you're writing your own personal stories, and these personal stories aren't always easy to move through, I always tell people make sure you have an advocate on your side who's going to help you as you see these feelings arise. And if you have um um if you just have really tough feelings about your writing because of what other people might have said to you about it, that's also gets to be real. You also get to take some time and process that. And you also get to remember those aren't necessarily real, right? Like what people have said about you and your writing may or may not be true. It just may be their perspective, right? So, one of the main ways I sort of begin to untangle thoughts and emotions and the ways that they impact the writing process is to allow myself to get really quiet and to get in touch with my intuition. And so in my next video, I'm going to share how you can get into your writing by tapping into your intention, your intuition, and being a part of community. I'll see you over there in that video.